Hi, my name is Roisin McNamara and welcome to our High Flyers in STEM podcast. Today we're delighted to speak to John Dolan, who's a Senior Engineer for Capacity Expansion and the Lead PMO for Boston Scientific. John delivers advice for inspiring PMOs on how to reach PMO positions in STEM organizations. John's career experience on expanding capacity for site manufacturing, advice on managing projects by starting with the end in mind, and plan for success so you're not caught by surprise when the success comes, and career progression as career growth is not always linear. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoy the show. Hi, John. Welcome to our High Flyers in STEM podcast. We're really excited to have you here today as our guest. Thank you so much for coming along. So for the purpose of our audience, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce a bit about your background and your experience?
Sure, of course. Thanks for having me today. It's great to speak to you. So I'm John Dolan, Senior Manufacturing Engineer in Boston Scientific and Site Lead for the PMO Group. I suppose my career background, especially in STEM, I suppose leads back to when I was in joined college. I did mechanical engineering in UIG, and out of that I got a graduate position from a spin-off company in the college. Called Air Composites. It was originally a spin-off from the college. It's just out in Invern, outside Spittle, and this company is a high-performance materials company. So they work in kind of the aerospace industry, wind energy, automotive, and marine. I joined as kind of a graduate position originally in line support on a new product that was in an aerospace application. So it was an Airbus propeller component. That's kind of where I cut my teeth, and I suppose was maybe dropped in the deep end and had to sink or swim there on a new product kind of on my own. But it's really satisfying work. It was really you had great responsibility, I suppose, working in the aerospace industry on those kind of components, and you'll always remember your first watching the first flight of an aircraft that you and the team have actually built the components for. So
the part you've played in that happening, and sometimes with those smaller to medium-sized businesses, you can get so much exposure to so many different areas. So I'm sure there's a lot of technical skills and learning that you learned at that time.
Yeah, and I suppose it's when you're in your first job or two as well, it's you're kind of immersed in a role as well. You're trying to pick up the technical parts of it, but also maybe the production end. Dealing with people, dealing with customers, dealing with suppliers. So I definitely think that it was a great learning experience and a great place to start a career in that type of industry. And I suppose from there I moved into projects mostly and R&D projects. I worked in R&D and process development, and began working with some research project with the European Space Agency, which again was really interesting. Different kind of work to be into to your run of the mill maybe opportunities that can be out there sometimes. And we were working on in the team working on structures and material components for launchers. So actual developmental projects for rocket launchers.
We would be highly regulated, I bet. I say the compliance around that would be of a high standard.
Highly regulated and really high tech applications. So you have things like maybe doing demonstrator panels and things, and you're doing compression testing at maybe 150 degrees below freezing point. So really high end, high tech applications, and had the honor, I suppose, of maybe presenting in front of the structures department of the European Space Agency at the headquarters in the Netherlands. So it's something that'll stay with you when you're put through your paces for 2 hours with a bunch of rocket scientists. It's something that'll, and the old joke kind of wears a bit thin that this isn't rocket science, but it is rocket science. They've heard it all before. So it was a really interesting area to be working in. It's really niche. It's a real high end but really niche area, and in terms of maybe a career, you need to go kind of all in that, and there's a lot of international travel, and it's probably localized to certain areas in Ireland more than others. Dublin and Shannon and certainly other parts of the country. And but I suppose I was just at at a point, this is all maybe pre my career in kind of medical devices, trying to just decide like, well, where do you want to go, and how do you couple that, the kind of satisfaction you get from the responsibility of kind of safety and highly regulated products and high tech manufacturing, and I thought kind of medical devices was that area for me.
Yes. And it can be kind of a natural progression to kind of, when you're coming from a highly regulated sector, I mean, moving into medical devices and all the regulations, coming from aerospace, automotive, can really help position you well for that transition.
Yeah, automotive and aerospace, I think, are the two that spring to mind, and it's around, I suppose, quality systems and standards. And those, that area, that kind of regulation is recognized, I suppose, when you're looking to get into kind of life sciences. That regulation is so important, and the change control and maybe validation and those kind of things are valued very much in medical devices, and I suppose it's difficult. It's difficult changing into medical devices if you don't have, or it has in the past. It's been difficult to get into that area without that background.
It can be very challenging, yeah, absolutely. And even coming from the high regulations that you came from and then moving into medical device, was it still such a big shift for you with the regulations of medical device being so much more, not demanding, but so much more in need of having that compliance? Was there a big transition for you?
Yeah, I mean, there was a pretty big transition, to be honest. I think from the regulation point of view, the quality standards is one thing, and also then I suppose maybe the volumes as well. The volumes, if you're in an automotive industry or an aerospace industry, you have a high value product at relatively low volumes. Whereas in medical devices, it can be high value, or it can be medium value, relatively speaking, but much faster production, higher production, especially somewhere like Boston Scientific, where you're dealing with millions of parts per year, and in other companies it's more, compared to thousands of parts per year. So that was a challenge. That a small company to a big company, that there's always that too.
The shift that comes with that as well. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think where you come from in terms of maybe being immersed and being the person who is dealing with the supplier and the customer and the process development engineer and everything in between, to a more defined term in a big company, and you need to know who to go to, and roles and responsibilities are more defined, and you need to work within that kind of framework in a larger company, especially in medical devices. So that can be, I found that a challenge.
Yes. Yeah, and the scope, then the sheer scale of the business, and then the opportunities for you to move into so many different areas, with a company like Boston Scientific, and I know you kind of touched upon you got your experience in the project management. When did you know? Is that when you sort of knew? Is that when you got your first taste and you says, right, project management is something that I really align with, and did you decide then that you kind of wanted to see that develop in your career?
Yeah, I did. I suppose I was assigned to projects when I joined Boston Scientific first, and I suppose even just like within the Galway campus here in Boston Scientific, it's a really busy campus as well. Like there's so much happening. It's I suppose primarily a manufacturing facility. There's nearly 4,000 full-time and kind of contract or contingent staff on site. There's also a whole suite of project work that kind of goes on aligned with operations. There's process development and product design, and then there's software development and equipment build, and there's the labs, and there's so many different parts. There's facilities, so there's so many different parts that variety can be kind of overwhelming as well. And I suppose the change, the driver for change is projects. That's how you manage change in an organization. So when I joined, I was assigned project, and I suppose I was probably seen as maybe more suited to that. Maybe that's the kind way I could put it. But so I kind of moved from maybe systems projects. We were replacing, kind of go back a couple of years, but replacing maybe shop floor paperwork with soft systems or software systems. And again, it kind of immersed me in something in a new area. I had to learn every line, every station, every line, every process, pretty much every person, because we were kind of transforming, what people are doing to a software kind of based system, an on-screen system. And that, again, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And managing all that and managing all those people, I suppose, and kind of the people side of the projects. From that, moving maybe into process improvement projects and process improvement programs. So I had the opportunity to kind of lead up a process improvement program over a couple of years in terms of another a product that was kind of fast growing and expanding quickly. And I suppose that's probably where I've landed in the last couple of years. That's kind of my niche at the moment is high or maybe rapidly expanding products that are maybe doubling year on year in terms of volume, and getting the projects set up to kind of scale production in terms of maybe facilities, equipment, validation, and then process improvement, and maybe strategic projects like technology that's going to bring step changes in the future. And kind of the project management is the vehicle for all of that, to organize all that kind of diversity.
And you get exposure to so many multiple projects where you are at the moment. And I know you guys have done some great expansions over the past, and I know and currently. So can you tell us a little about sort of as the PMO right now, and the site leads, what was that role involved for you at the moment?
Yeah, so I suppose the PMO role, just for anyone, like it's the project management office. Like I said, we're an operations facility, or there's a large operations facility and the projects run alongside operations. So the project managers and project leads, you're constantly changing and adjusting based on what's happening in real time in operations. More so than just you have a scope of a project and you have to deliver it to these timelines. There's so much reprioritization and change that there's a PMO lead in each department that coordinates projects and maybe prioritizes, organizes resources, and then that's in every department on site. We've a dozen or so of these departments, and then that lead for each area meets on a team as a group, and then that's the group that I'm kind of the chair of. And in that role, we probably have about 1,000, over 1,000 active projects across the site.
Wow.
And then many more kind of in hoppers waiting to be started, or maybe some on hold or being waiting to be activated. And like you said, the diversity is so high in terms of all those different, we could have safety improvement, quality improvement, problem solving, process improvement, just really high, software and clinical projects and NPE projects and new products and design. I suppose my role, it's a very collaborative role. We work, I suppose, to set the standard for project management in terms of our the Boston Scientific process, the training to the people who are impacted by projects, which is 1,000 or 2,000 people, or maybe everybody's on site is impacted by some projects. I suppose we also administer our software system, which contains like a project database, and it's really vital for lessons learned, risk mitigation, and I suppose just benchmarking as well within the areas, and benchmarking across other sites, and being that kind of I suppose maybe creating that kind of strategy around how we do things, and align it with our culture on site as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of projects you're dealing with, and the plant expansion, those scale ups that you look after. If some of our listeners are listening to this and thinking, "Wow, I'm about to go through a plant expansion, or we're about to scale up," could you share any advice to them for anyone who is about to embark on a journey of expansion or scale up?
Yeah. I think some of the factors, I suppose, that have led to successes here, I suppose, I kind of recommend, start with the end in mind is something that's probably important. An example here is where we're planning to double a product in terms of volume, but we left enough room for we planned for greater success, really. So we planned that we could double or triple or quadruple the size of the facilities, and as things have turned out, we've needed every bit of that extra expansion, and that planning, starting with the end in mind and planning for success, so that you're not caught by surprise when the success comes.
Yes.
I think it probably goes without saying that the multidisciplinary team up front, that's often what a lot of people will do in the beginning. You'll have every function and everyone will give input, but I think throughout, because like I said, you deal with so much change,
Yes.
and it can be difficult to remain agile when your projects, like a facility build could be 18 months, 2 years, more.
Yeah.
You're dealing with a changing landscape, so there's going to be change throughout, and you don't want just input from certain people at the start and then at the end. You need to keep that throughout. And I
Yes.
suppose just future proofing, your making decisions based on the future, because they are the time frames that you're talking about. So they kind of lead to some of the successful outcomes I think we've had here in Boston.
And it is such a success story, the way it's grown, right across Ireland, the scales up and the headcount. And, it's been fantastic for the people in the business, because they've had so many opportunities to grow into different areas. And I think that's what makes the company really exciting for people who work within it. And, as a project manager and having them scale of projects that you work on, and then obviously they can't all possibly go according to plan in the right ways at the right time. And how do you manage it when, you've got multiple projects and you're dealing with difficult moments and staying focused and being able to move forward when you're faced with these challenges?
Yeah, we could say every project's going to have its moment as well. If there isn't risk, it's not really a project. So I think management of risk and prioritization and keeping agile, I think is the key in a lot of this. I think keeping the big picture in mind. I think, and that goes for in the good times and bad. I think we can sometimes get bogged down in projects at the day-to-day level, and I think trying to bring the team, consistently looking at the higher purpose of the project, or the vision. So yes. Sometimes it's our role to articulate the vision, and sometimes it's our role to create that vision. Sometimes you're in an area that doesn't have a 2 to 3 year plan. Is key. So articulating that high level plan and fitting in, your work into context. And I think that, facing those difficulties as challenges, I think framing it as a challenge. Yeah. For the teams is really important too.
Keeping that big picture in sight, exactly. Yeah. And stakeholder buy-in, because you're dealing with so many different people, and influencing and getting them to buy into the vision of the direction that you're traveling. Can you share any advice on how you can go about gaining the commitment and getting the buy-in from stakeholders and getting that engagement?
Yeah. I suppose in terms of engaging stakeholders, you'd always say to communicate the benefits, the benefits for different stakeholders of the change you're trying to bring about. And communication in general, I think, strong communication. And often, we said the project team has the vision, the long-term vision, but maybe not all the stakeholders have that vision as well. They don't know where you're coming from. So communication of that as well. I think in terms of, a lot of it comes down to personal relationships a lot of the time, where you can build up personal relationships, managing existing ones and creating new ones, and developing an environment that you can keep, you can kind of leverage your relationships, and that can be helpful in terms of the people that you're dealing with. And I suppose in terms of commitments, you gotta people make commitments in different ways, and you have to go with what people do. For some people, a contract is a binding agreement, and for others, a contract is the starting point of discussions. And there's everything in between. So, trying to match how people give commitments to what you need is probably the key as well.
Yes. Okay. Very good. And I mean, when you're scaling up like you are, and the skill shortage at the moment has proven challenging for everybody across the board to get great talent. Have you had to adopt your hiring process in any way? Have you had to make any changes to attract great candidates and to manage the skills shortage? Have you changed your hiring process?
Yeah, I mean we have, and it has been a challenge. You know, the market kind of ebbs and flows in this
Yeah.
way over time.
Yeah.
But I think certainly over the last couple of years, we've seen that, you know, certain skills are at a premium, and
Yeah.
we have had to change. We've had to change a lot of things. I think there's a few, you know, practical things that
Yeah.
we've had to do, like even in terms of how we do interviews and how we schedule them, in terms
Mm.
of, you know, if you're interviewing for multiple roles, back-to-back interviews and turnaround offers in, you know, within a day or the following day. I think that's becoming a key thing to you know, retain, to getting people to on board. I
Yeah.
think we've done a lot of events, you know, day-long events, and kind of hiring events and blitzes
Yeah.
and this kind of thing, and hiring
I've
panels. I
seen
think,
some of that great work. Yeah.
yeah, and I
Mm.
suppose in terms of maybe the candidates as well, and, you know, the we've had to probably look, you know, there's probably greater diversity now in terms of backgrounds as well.
Yeah.
We talked about aerospace and automotive, but
Yeah.
lots of different industries, and we need to look more at what's transferable from other industries. It
Yes.
has become a key thing, and I suppose we worked in with, you know, like the graduates, graduate level, you know, the graduate program as well has won awards at Boston Scientific in the past as well, and that's, you
Yes.
know, working closely with the colleges, and I know there's with GMIT and NUIG, there's
Yeah.
courses that are being worked on to gain the, or to work to get to help alleviate the skills shortage, but also for Boston Scientific to attract candidates then,
Yeah.
and to
New
build
emerging
relationships,
talent. Yeah.
yeah, in terms of
Absolutely.
students and graduates, and
Mm.
like a huge amount of our you know, high potential candidates, but a lot of our leaders on site have came through as graduates, you know, vice presidents and you know, above have came in as graduates,
Yes.
and
You've got some
that's,
really great success stories there from
yeah,
people who have started on the production operation floor who have made it to greatness. I think that's a real inspiration to show how that you can get that development and the different opportunities that are available.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, and the graduate program, yes, it's been well recognized, and it's great to tap into the emerging talent very early on and build those relationships and position ourselves as an employer of choice.
Exactly.
And so when you're onboarding your team and you've got a great team who's working around you, how do you go about building that great team and then also maintaining a really good culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suppose that we've done a lot of onboarding over the years, and, you know, we've worked with Hero and other partners, and we, you know, we've really had to. You've got to set yourself up to be able to onboard in a really highly functioning way. You know,
Yeah.
the first number of weeks is can be critical to retention as well. You know, it sets the tone for, you know, someone's time with the company.
Yeah.
So it has to be at the highest level that you can. So we
Mm.
have to constantly be refining how we do that as well. So, you know,
Mm.
some of the tactical things, even just the small things that we do, you know, on our teams, you know, we try to have, you know, on big programs. So some of the projects we're talking about are at scale. They're big programs. There could be, you know, 10, 15, 20 people working on a program or more. And we try to have, you know, sub teams that are kind of self-directing. And
Mm.
then within the teams, we have maybe mixed levels of experience. So we might have someone who's here, you know, 20 years plus, with someone here for 5 years, with the new, you know, with a graduate and a new person. And we set
Yes.
ourselves up to be able to accept new people into those sub teams. So you have kind of ready-made buddies, coaches, and SMEs, subject matter experts on the
Mm.
team, and then they see that as beneficial as well on the team. So
Yes.
they are, you know, some of our development planning that we do with existing people includes, you know, at the different levels, you know, showing the new person around in the first months,
Yeah.
getting them set up on systems, and then at a higher level, it's, you know, coaching them on technical areas, and then at the subject matter expert level, you know, it's how do you develop the entire team on a certain competency. So we kind of have built that. It's a bit of a virtuous cycle, I suppose,
Yes.
that the onboarding person has all this has this nearly process set up, and
Yes.
then I think it's not seen as, you know, it can sometimes in the past it's seen as a bit of a burden to onboard a person, you know. So it's seen
Yeah.
as it's part of the process, and it's part of your role, and it lets you demonstrate it lets the team demonstrate their skills as well.
Yeah.
So that's, and then it the helpfulness and openness has always been something here in Boston Scientific that people comment on, that they feel when they join and during their time here. And I think that's probably part of it in terms of how well we target onboard and
yeah, it's so important, that leading and that integration into the business. And it can be a challenge when we're all so busy in our role, and then we're bringing someone new into the business and inducting them in and showing them how we operate. And it is that challenge between bringing them in to become part of the business and showing them, like you say, the skills and the ways. But also we have our the ongoing work that we're working with as well. So that building those positive cultures and bringing them into the team, it really sets yourself up for success, doesn't it, in the long run, when they're integrated in such a great way.
Yeah, and I think it's it's a jumping off point for the rest of the cultural kind of cultural norms. I think that a lot of companies have the sign on the wall, and the values, but I think the environment has to be intentionally set up to support that.
Yes.
So, and then you're kind of living it. Then you can see it actively from when you start. You can see that helpfulness and cooperation. So I think that builds credibility.
Yes.
In those other things that we talk about then, and
yes, and it builds that success for that person as well, and for the team, and bringing them into the culture. And that's what all helps towards great culture. Yeah. Absolutely. And then, so in your career journey today, and you think about, we meet a lot of great people along the journey. Is there anyone who's given you a piece of advice that has been really resonated with you and that has helped shape who you are today?
Yeah, like you try to think back to your great bosses. You try to think of words of advice that you've been given. There's probably one or two things that have kind of stuck with me maybe through the years. I remember one of my a mentor, I suppose, of mine, who kind of said, aim for excellence, not perfection, which I thought was kind of a good line. And it's about not overextending yourself or not aiming too high, but it's also, I suppose, more practically that to bring that idea or standard of excellence into everything that you do. And it's something that we do on our team, we do in our and across the departments here in Boston Scientific, that we try to kind of say, like, where we're working at the minute is in manufacturing. We say, like, is it world-class manufacturing? This medical device is made in only this place, and it's the only place in the world that you're going to receive this therapy and this device. Is what we're doing at a world-class standard. And then that feeds into maybe, it kind of guides us a bit. So we said, like, how do we do projects? Is it good enough, or is it an integrated software system? That lets us hold the lessons learned and identify risks. Like we talked about onboarding, like, is it okay? Is it good enough? Or have we thought about it and instituted something that you could take as best in class? So we try to bring that into to everything that we do. So that's one piece that probably stuck me. And I think big picture is probably something somebody said to me once, and we've kind of described that as already. In its own way, it kind of keeps you going through the smaller issues that you hit in life and in projects.
Yes, absolutely, keeping the eye on the big picture, exactly, and that world-class excellence, and always aiming for that standard. And then if there's people listening to this to our podcast and they're thinking, God, I'd love to excuse me, I'd love to move into the project management side. It's really interesting. Maybe they're in technical engineering space at the moment and they want more PM type work and get more exposure. What are the qualities that you think that they would need to cultivate to develop their career in that space? What are the values and skills that need to be to make a great PMO?
Well, in terms of project management and PMO, like, I think it's probably a soft skill, but it's the kind of self-awareness and situational awareness, the kind of maybe emotional intelligence, maybe is the best term for it. Where you're dealing with people primarily when you're dealing with projects, and your role, especially in a PMO role, where you're dealing with prioritization. you're dealing with needs,
Yeah.
needs and availability and change. And that's really what you're dealing with. And I think in terms of prioritization, people often think it's you sit down, you do the offsite, and you make a list. Like that's day one. I think in real life, the pipe is full of projects. Everyone's assigned, and it's the new projects and the change. So it's trying to, I suppose, assess the situation and assess what people need, and being kind of emotionally intelligent enough to how to respond and what's an emergency and what isn't. And when you're not delivering something to someone because it's not a priority, how do you deal with that situation? And it takes a high level of emotional intelligence and
emotional intelligence. Yeah.
So that's a high, it's a large part of it, and it'll differentiate a lot of project managers. A highly capable technical person with low empathy.
It's never going to work, is it? Because you have to have that emotional intelligence, because I think people want to work for you, then people want to contribute and help. When you can build those relationships, they really stand to you when you're trying to get a project over the line.
Yeah. I mean, I think communication we've mentioned already here a couple of times, and it probably goes along with that. I mean, personally, I think the maybe structure and organization goes a long way as well when you're dealing with things at scale, in terms of dozens of projects and dozens of stakeholders, or hundreds of, like I said, I think there's 1,000 active projects. The organization skills, I think the softer things, like there's a lot of things you could say about project management practices and the course and all that, and I think that kind of the basis for that is probably the organization, communication skills, and emotional intelligence. Then lets you integrate all that together. That's kind of what builds a successful project manager or PM.
Yes, absolutely. And if you had to look at, say, the industry at the moment, say in the medical device industry, what do you think are some of the emerging trends that are happening, that are sort of shaping the industry?
Yeah, it's constantly changing and evolving, I suppose. COVID has impacted every industry, everybody in the world. It's impacted long supply chains. That's not unique to medical devices, but it is certainly where it is impacting things, and that's driving us to change and rethink certain things as well. I think there's I think the skills, certain skills are at a premium throughout the world as well, and we're doing our fair share of, I think, international recruiting successfully as well. I think that's a key challenge and trend that we're going to see more of. I think in terms of maybe technical trends or technology trends, big data, in terms of where we work, in terms of maybe at the manufacturing level, data analytics, and we've a couple of interesting things on site where we're using deep learning to see, can we aid manual inspections, so kind of teachable machines, and maybe robotics and automation.
We've seen that.
It's been with us a long time, and it can be at times slow to adopt some of those, slow to adopt some of the new technologies in the medical device industry, just based on regulatory to jump through. And I suppose maybe collaborative robotics as well, we're starting to see more of. So not maybe replacement with automation or robotics, but working with robotics. We're starting to see more and more applications of this, where you're using the best of equipment for what it's good at, in terms of handling, speed, maybe repeatability, and you're using the best of the human brain, which is pattern recognition, although the AI side is catching up, but defect recognition, I think, and decision making, I suppose, ambiguity and decision making is where, and when you can couple those together, we're seeing that can really work. It's complex and it's difficult, but there's some of the big trends we're seeing.
Yes, and that's what you speak of there would reflect in the demands that we see come through and the talent and the skills of what companies are looking for in their people now, and how software is becoming so much a part within engineering, and that digitalization, and automation and robotics. So we see that becoming definitely an emerging trend, as well. And if you could look back, I mean, you've been quite a journey, and if you look back and you're talking to your 20-year-old self, and would you have any advice when you look back to your younger self that you'd give?
To my 20-year-old self, if I could look back those few years, like I suppose generally to 20-year-olds, I think career-wise, like I think your 20s are an important career really for building towards where you want to be. I think it's difficult for anybody to really decide their career path in their 20s.
Yes.
I don't think I think in the past you'd read it, say simply decide where you want to go, look at the steps in between, and just go towards wherever you want to go. Simple as that. I do think though that you need to be moving towards where you want to be. So things that are interesting to you and things that have a future. But I would say it's nearly the work hard, kind of play hard when you're in your 20s, that you need to be making ground on that in your 20s.
Yeah.
I kind of think that sometimes people they start thinking about their career development a bit too late. Maybe like our pensions. We kind of leave it a bit too late. So that would be one thing I'd be saying to your 20s, that you need to be thinking early about that. I think it's not a bad time to get some variety in terms of one or two companies and travel,
and find out what resonates with you and what are the areas that you like and enjoy.
And I'd say for people in their 20s, but people working on at different levels as well, I think maybe moving towards things that you're engaged with and interested in, rather than a means to an end.
Yes.
I think if you're doing a job to pass through it to get to something else, it rarely works like that. It rarely works. You rarely enjoy it, and you rarely bring yourself to a position, that. So like you're much better off, I think, moving one step at a time and saying, "Oh, I'm interested in that. I'll take a step towards that." And things change, and the industry changes, and you change, and your preferences change. So somebody said once, it's the past you'd look at it a bit like a ladder. It's more like a map, maybe. You're kind of going towards something, and maybe you get distracted along the way and you move someplace else. I think that's a better analogy.
There's different avenues to that end route. Exactly. Yeah. And trying new things, and starting early. So you do start to develop your career at an earlier stage. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been fantastic having you on the podcast, John. Thank you so much. And I'm sure there's listeners who are going to want to maybe get in touch with you. Is there a way they can reach out to you, maybe on social media or something, if they want to ask you questions? Are you open to being in contact, made contact with?
Certainly, you can check out LinkedIn. You can check the Boston Scientific LinkedIn page and the careers portal on the Boston Scientific website for career and jobs questions. And thanks very much for having me today. I've really enjoyed
thank you
today.
Thanks very much, John. It's been lovely having you today as our guest, and thank you very much. That was such a great episode. I really enjoyed talking to John Dolan, the Senior Engineer for Capacity Expansion and Lead PMO with Boston Scientific. Subscribe and like, etc., or follow and connect with us on LinkedIn. We hope you enjoyed the show, and see you next time.